Hello and welcome to episode 14 of the Ego Chall Podcast, a Call of Duty esports podcast. My name is Preston Byers, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host Justin Binkowski. And on today's episode, we'll be discussing the Call of Duty League's Stage 3 Major, which concluded with the Atlanta FaZe winning the event, their second major win of the season. And we also have some roster mania to talk about, including another London Royal Ravens roster change. So how you doing, Bink?
I'm all right. A little tired, but got some
Same.
COD to get through the night. So, as Trem would say, just gotta pop the stim and get right into it.
Yeah, you got to send the chow. Late at night, you have to send the chow. So let's get right into it. Let's talk about the major. This is a $500,000 event, the third one of the season, the third of five. And coming in, the Toronto Ultra were the favorites. I wouldn't say heavy favorites because FaZe looked really good most of the stage. The subliners were the other one seed in the winners bracket, and they beat FaZe in group play in stage 3. So there were a lot of talking points, and probably the biggest talking point for us was OpTic coming in. They started in the losers bracket, and they would have to fight their way through the losers bracket to make any sort of run. But let's start on the first 4 matches. This was a different schedule than they usually do. Usually they start these events on Wednesday. They started this one on Thursday, May 13th. In the first 2 matches, I think we both picked, well, I mean, for the pod, you got the Seattle LAG game wrong, but for me, I was perfect through the first 2 matches of the event. The London Royal Ravens eliminated the Paris Legion with a 3-1 win, and my team, the best team in the Call of Duty League, despite their record and their overall performance throughout the season, the Los Angeles Guerrillas, they defeated and eliminated the Seattle Surge with a 3-1 win. Any lasting thoughts from these 2 matches in particular?
Yeah, not much to talk about really from these ones. I felt like London was gonna win. I picked Paris for the
Yeah.
Paris' winning champs crew. And I did pick Seattle in the other match because I knew you were gonna pick LAG. But both of these matches were 3-1 wins for the respective team. The team that won, which London over Paris and LAG over Seattle, they won all 3 respawns. The team that ended up losing the series won the search. So I just thought that was kind of interesting. The only thing I really noted down that I thought was a really cool play was Pristini had a ninja defuse when Surge was down 4-5, and it was, I believe it was a 4v4 situation. He just like hopped on the bomb right away and went for the defuse. That was a pretty cool play for us around 11. Then Seattle was able to clutch up for their only map win of the major there. But other than that, they're a pretty straightforward series in my opinion.
Yep, nothing really to say. Also, Seattle choked to Control. What's new? Because they are by far the worst team in Control. I wrote the article. We'll talk about it later, but about Seattle's roster change, and they're, I believe, 3-17 this season in Control, and they've only won on Raid Control, so or on Garrison Control, which
Yeah,
is just incredible.
in that one in particular, I wrote down they ended up losing 3-1, but I believe it was the first round if my notes are correct. Seattle was on offense and they capped A on Garrison Control first, which is obviously the harder point to cap. And they had plenty of lives left. I obviously don't know the exact number off the top of my head, but they had lives advantage. Might not have even been an advantage, but there were a lot of lives left because they capped A early.
Mhm.
Should have been an easy offensive round, which is hard to come by on Garrison, especially after you secure A. You just have to go to B, which is the easier point most of the time, and they weren't able to do it. So that's all I meant by it. They choked that
Mhm.
one round, but as you kind of pointed out, they haven't really been strong at control this whole year. So yeah.
The third match of the day, highly anticipated winners bracket match between the Atlanta FaZe and the Dallas Empire, a rematch of the Stage 1 Major Grand Finals, which Atlanta won. Atlanta won here as well, 3-0. What do you think of Atlanta coming out and sweeping Dallas?
Yeah, I believe we both picked Atlanta to win this
Yeah.
series. Coming in, it's still we had only seen a couple of matches, I believe 4 matches with this Dallas revamped roster with Fellow in place of Hook.
Yeah.
So I don't think either of us really had a lot of high expectations for Dallas in this match in particular. but Atlanta kind of just dominated. They took Apocalypse Hardpoint 250 to 209, so not obviously, like a blowout there, but then they
Hmm.
win Checkmate Search 6-1. Obviously a pretty big win. And then the Garrison controls 3-2. So technically the respawns were kind of close, but Atlanta took control on the search. And then most notably, just looking at the stats, Celium dropped a 1.61 overall in the series, and Abizi had a 1.33. Whereas Shotzi had a 1.14 for the Empire, and the next highest was Krim with a 0.82. So, kind of big slaying disparity there, despite what the score lines might indicate. And yeah, FaZe came out strong, took care of business.
Yeah, not a real surprising result. We knew how good FaZe were. Dallas, they haven't looked poor or anything. It's just not been perfect going for them so far. In the last match of the of Thursday, the Florida Mutineers versus the Los Angeles Thieves. This was the Mutineers' first winners bracket appearance of the season, and they won. They actually came out. They beat the Thieves, who have Hook, and this is a relatively new lineup with Hook in the starting roster. But they win 3-1. What do you think of the Thieves losing? I think this is their second match with Hook in the lineup.
It was their second match they played because they were 3-1 in group play after beating OpTic without Hook, and then they lost to New York, and then they had
Yeah.
this match. So second one with Hook. Um, I predicted Florida to take this one, and apparently that was more of a controversial take than I thought. I know you picked LA, and I feel like
Hmm.
the overall majority of the community was actually leaning LA, but I was mainly picking Florida just from that chemistry standpoint, where like we
Yeah.
just said, this was the Thief's second match with Hook. So the scores were super close. It was a really hard fought series, regardless of Florida pulling it out. It started checkmate hardpoint 250 to 233. Florida pulled away at the end, and Neptune, I don't remember what his exact streak was, but it was by that, like on that rotation from the hard P1 inside the plane to P2 in the back garage area. He just went off and went on a nasty streak there. And then second map was Express Search and Destroy, and Florida wins 6-5 with Neptune getting a 1v2 in round 11. It was, I don't remember exactly who he was fighting, but it was like two people in the lockers area by that bomb by the train, and he kind of, just pieced them up. They didn't like chow simultaneously, but it was kind of like one after another, and he was able to get both kills. So it was an impressive start to the series by Neptune there, and it looked like they had all momentum. But then the Thieves pull off an 0-2 comeback in control to win. Checkmate control 3-2, force a map 4, another hard point before it takes the Moscow hard point 250 to 216. So it was a close series overall. By far the most entertaining series I thought of this first day of the major. Um, and if we take a quick look at the stats, Neptune had a 1.38. Oh, that's not the full match stats. That's just the hardpoint ones. Um, so I don't know what his exact hardpoint was, but Neptune did play well in the series, so it wouldn't surprise me if he actually did have the highest KD
Yeah.
in that series. He actually did not. Now I have it. Skies went 1.19. It went 184 most kills and highest KD. Neptune was behind him though with a 1.10.
All right. So let's get on to Friday matches. We have probably one of the most shocking results in a major so far this season. London just sweeping Minnesota. We both had Minnesota advancing regardless of who advanced to face them, and just absolutely a stomp here. I mean, just what did you think of this? Because I mean, I was mind blown.
Yeah, I mean, I honestly don't even really remember the series like off the top of my head. I feel like it was just a super quick one. And probably because I was kind of surprised that London actually, not only was I surprised that London won it, but they won it in the 3-0 fashion that they did.
Hmm.
We look at the scores real quick. It was Garrison Hardpoint first map 250-232. Raid Search was 6-3 London, and then Garrison Control was 3-0. So close map one, and then London kind of had control after that for the most part. But yeah, I mean, I really don't like. It was a pretty forgettable series in my mind. I don't even remember. I was just super surprised that Minnesota ended up losing in the end.
Well, it's really surprising considering Minnesota, they outslayed London in the hard point. Paul X, he finishes 19 and 28 on Garrison hard point. Zaptius 24-28, Shawnee 23-25, and Zed was the only one with a positive KD, and Minnesota still lost, and Priesta dropped 35 kills in that map.
I do remember that, and yeah, Priesta was frying.
And then
Now I
Priesta had two
realize
bad
that.
maps after that. He
Yeah.
goes 2-7 on raid, and then 11-21 on garrison control. Just a really surprising result considering Minnesota, I believe, finished in the top 5 in the second major of the season, and they were. I
Yeah, it
know
was
they.
top 4.
Yeah, so
They were the
top.
first team to lose to Toronto on Sunday.
Yeah, so a really surprising result. They go out with no prize money for this event. I think they get 10 CDL points, so it doesn't hurt them, completely. It's not like they went home entirely empty-handed, but a really big loss, and this leads into a roster change for Minnesota. They hadn't, so they benched Major Maniac during stage 2 group play, and they replaced him with Standy, and they
Yep.
immediately improved. They go undefeated with Standy in the rest of group play. They get to the major, they start in winners bracket, and like you just said, they finish in top 4. They lose to the eventual champions, the Toronto Ultra, and then this stage, they don't do that hot in group play. They begin in the losers bracket, and they're swept in the losers bracket matchup by uh, one of the worst teams in the league if you're looking at it from a CDL point standing. And London had finished, I believe, in maybe 4th place in their group. I want to say, I think they finished 2 and 3 in their group. So they had won 2 matches. London wasn't, some god squad coming in, and Minnesota loses to them. This leads to Accuracy being benched for Major Maniac, so Major Maniac is back in the lineup. What do you make of this roster change?
I'm kind of torn on it, to be honest. I've never been like the biggest fan of Accuracy. Like I've always like respected him. I think he's a really talented assault rifle player. He's smart. Obviously, he's super clutch and search, so I love that aspect of his game. But I think this is just a case where like what I like about this change is just that they have Major Maniac on the bench, right? So like this change doesn't really cost them anything.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing it in stage 4, and it's already a guy they're paying the salary for, and he's on the bench. So like this is kind of like an experiment, in my opinion, where like they can bring Major Maniac in for this stage, and if things don't work out, they could technically bring Accuracy back in for stage 5 or champs. Not really sure, obviously, if that's what they're gonna do, but I think it should help their search and destroy gameplay, where obviously Accuracy is clutch and search and destroy aside from like that 1v3 ace against
Mm-hmm.
OpTic in stage 2 major. Like he's had moments throughout his career where he's always clutching up and just does the ice in his veins, all that. Um, so he's a good search player, but Major Maniac is known as a good search player too. Playing with guys like Simp and Abizi and
Mm-hmm.
the S&D crew that kind of came up in recent years. So it should help in that regard, which was a mode. Search was a mode that was really strong for the Rocker and during their honeymoon phase with Standy, and maybe that's something else that Major Maniac will bring to the table. I'm not really sure, but I do think it is worth noting that he said in his tweet that it was like fasted gameplay, which was likely referring to Ramadan for religious reasons. So that's kind of just like unfortunate timing for him. If it obviously is affecting his gameplay with him not being able to eat throughout the day. So I did feel like that's worth mentioning. So obviously, I think Ash is a good player, veteran leader who could bring a lot to a team. So not really sure if we'll see him again this year. But I'm interested to see how this change will shake out for Minnesota, just based on the fact that we thought they were looking like a top tier team after bringing in Standy, and now it's kind of like they came off, like you said, second to last place finish at this major. So gonna be interesting to see if they're able to bounce back with Major Maniac.
I wasn't entirely sure that they were going to make a change. I definitely didn't know that they were going to end up benching accuracy in this, but the response from Minnesota on social media, the players, the coaches, the organization as a whole, it was apparent that it was an unacceptable performance, and that when Brian Saint and Reppin, they go on Twitter and they make a video and they say, this is obviously unacceptable, blah blah blah, and they do that on Twitter. That makes me think, well, okay, like if you're making this public of a statement, it wouldn't surprise me if you made a change as well, considering how high expectations were for this team after a top four finish at the previous major and wins, I believe, over Dallas and OpTic in group play. So there's that. I just think there's too high of expectations for the team. I shouldn't say too high, because really you should expect the most out of this team. But I just thought maybe there was something coming or something brewing there after the social media response from the team.
I think, in unrelated, I think I actually like how, the Rocker did their video to announce the change. Kind of gives more info than just, like a tweet, with other changes that we see. But aside from that, I think it's actually like kind of nuts if you just think about all of the like veteran top tier main AR players who have been benched this year, right? Like now we have actually getting benched. Methods was already benched. Slasher was benched. I feel like I'm missing somebody else, but I'm not really sure off the top of my head. Let me think. Nobody. London, Paris. So that's probably the big three that I'm thinking of, right? I guess you could just Diamond Con obviously doesn't fit into that, but he's just an AR player who was benched. So I guess that's the big three of like veteran ARs, right? Slasher, accuracy, and methods now who have all been benched. And it's definitely, we were talking about it before the show, off-season stuff, and we got a while until we get there, but it will definitely be interesting to see. We got to figure out what's going on if there's going to be expansion teams and stuff like that. But you got to think if that is a case, or some teams are rebuilding, these are some of the guys like accuracy, slasher, and methods who you might build a team around, in the sense of getting that strong assault rifle player and then filling out your roster from there. Could be a route that some teams go down.
Yeah, assault rifle players are. With the Krieg buffs, you never know. They might be in high demand, and those players will maybe not. Maybe they won't get promoted back up to their current team's roster, but maybe they'll be traded or acquired in some way by another team looking to improve their AR spot. Who knows? I hope. I don't think the league is better off with slasher, methods, and accuracy on the bench. No disrespect to whatever three players that they would be replacing, but especially slasher. He's a world champion, one of the greatest Call of Duty players of all time. Methods, probably one of the greatest personalities in Call of Duty of all time. Accuracy is obviously super clutch, and he's been around for a long time. So I hope that those guys make it back, because it's a lot more interesting when those guys are in the league and they're competing in the top level. So let's move on to the next match. This was OpTic Chicago versus the Los Angeles Guerrillas. This was an unfortunate result for me, as I believe I picked LAG to go to the top four. I think.
I believe so.
It was either top four or top five. They were going to go really far either way, and they actually played really well. This is a constant occurrence for this team, and it is incredibly frustrating. We talked about it on the last podcast, but they had the same amount of wins, I believe, as the Florida Mutineers, who were in the winners bracket, and they finished, I think, 2 spots ahead of the Guerrillas in group play. They just choke so many matches, so many games. It's ridiculous. They had the opportunity to beat OpTic. They could have swept OpTic in all sincerity in this series had they clutched up, but they didn't, and it ends up going to OpTic 3-1. What did you think of this series?
Yeah, that was the biggest takeaway for me. Was just like this was our first look at OpTic. Like we talked about it at length in the last podcast. That
Yeah.
like could we imagine OpTic just losing this? You know, they're starting in the loser bracket, and there was a possibility they just get like top 10, which probably would have been one of the OpTic's worst placings, and God knows how long. I would have to look it up. But yeah, like that was a possibility coming into the major. There was a lot of questions surrounding OpTic and their struggles at that time in group
Hmm.
play, but Gorillas come out here and they win that first match, and it could have been like a little bit of a nervous thing for the Green Wall, like oh my God, 2 maps away from dropping out of the major, but then they're able to get the job done, winning 2, 3, and 4. Though all the maps were super close after LAG wins Garrison Hardpoint 250 148, so that wasn't particularly close. But then
Hmm.
after that, OpTic takes Moscow Surge 6-5. They win Raid Control 3-2, and then Moscow Hardpoint 250 to 210. So it was a really close series. And yeah, we can look at the stats real quick.
When the
Most
in the search, it
notes.
was Envoy and Scump. They combined for 21 kills.
There
A
you go.
Form 1 dash, he combined for 9. So there was I mean, just I believe it was Scump. I think it was on Raid Control. He had a really clutch kill uh, on defense, and that ended up winning them the round. It just There are just certain moments, and I'm obviously like I'm impartial when I write and stuff. It doesn't really bleed into that, but when I'm watching it, I almost always want an underdog to win because it's the best story. It's the most interesting to see. The Los Angeles Guerrillas, who are currently in second to last in the league, to beat OpTic, who is, I mean, they've dropped in the standings a little bit, but they're still a top 5 team, and OpTic is a huge name. It just It's heartbreaking to see teams throw away advantages or just completely choke in the worst case scenario. There are just multiple moments during this series. A 6-5 result for OpTic on Moscow Search, a 3-2 win for OpTic on Raid Control, and a 250 to 210. It wasn't like Moscow Hardpoint wasn't super close because OpTic dominated, I think, P2, and they held for like 40 seconds, and it basically was the difference. But just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, I think that's just a sign. Like this is, we still got to remember that was the
Hmm.
first major for LAG with Sheen, right? Like, so what they played 7 matches now with Chino, so it's a little bit more than some of these other teams that made changes heading into stage 3. But it's still a relatively new team, and like you said, they've had a ton of close series, so the potential is definitely there, and obviously they're running out of time in terms of the season to get their points to make sure they go to champs. But so stage 4 is going to be a big time uh, for them to show what they're made of, because if they have another stage where it's great if they're having close matches, right? Like if they're losing, even if the matches are close, like that's a sign that they have potential. But like
Yeah.
the window for that is closing. Like you have to clutch up in these matches now in stage 4 and stage 5. So we'll have to keep an eye on that. I know you just certainly will in stage 4.
Yeah, just to correct myself, the Gorillas are in ninth place, not 11th place. So they're
Yeah.
only 30 points back from the Mutineers, who are in eighth. So they're 30 points away from, well, I guess like 31 points away from being in the top 8. But so it's definitely not out of the realm of possibility that they actually go to champs and they get to compete for the multi-million-dollar prize. But man, if you say win 0 matches in group play, that's 0 points. Even winning 1 or 2 matches, that's at most 20 points. It's really when you get to the major, you have to perform well, because getting 10 points every major, it's not going to cut it, especially if teams like Mutineers or the Rocker have a good event. Then you're kind of out. And LAG are going to need to fix that. Same with all those other bottom teams. They need to really clutch up these last 3 months or 2.5 months or whatever of the season. So let's move on to the match we were all really looking forward to. The Atlanta FaZe versus the Toronto Ultra. This was a rematch of the Stage 2 Major Grand Finals, which the Ultra won. Um, Atlanta actually beat Toronto earlier in that event, and then Toronto got revenge in the grand finals. They looked absolutely dominant, and they hadn't lost since that first FaZe matchup coming into this. I think it was like 7 or 8 consecutive wins since that loss to FaZe in the Stage 2 major. So they come in, they're really hot. FaZe is actually really hot as well, and FaZe ends up winning 3-2, breaking the Ultras' win streak and sending them down to the losers bracket. What did you think of FaZe versus Ultra?
Yeah, this was. I mean, we had a ton of great series
Mm-hmm.
throughout this major. This was probably like the first epic one. Obviously, we kind of touched on earlier that Florida LA Thieves match was probably the best match of the first day, but this was the match a lot of people wanted to see, and it was really close. Went down to the wire. Obviously, with a Game 5 victory. But the biggest thing for me was that Atlanta was able to win both searches. Sorry, I believe the CDL Twitter tweeted that with Game 2, it was Atlanta's 7th straight S&D win, and it was Toronto's first S&D loss in 33 days. So
Wow.
that was a huge win, in my
Mm-hmm.
opinion. That probably, Toronto was able to respond, and they were really good at control, and they had a lengthy win streak in control that was ended towards the end of the major, I believe. But regardless of kind of here, they come out and they take that controls, the swing mode, they're able to take the raid hardpoint map to force a Game 5, but then, Atlanta doing what Atlanta does, comes out and closes it with a strong search win there. Shout out Tupac, I guess.
Yep.
Whatever you want to attribute it to. That's obviously, I will always be in the group that S&D wins championships. So, that's basically the tale of the series was, Atlanta wins map 1, they win both searches, boom, job done.
And that's what we talked about when we were previewing this match, that if FaZe won the searches, it came down mostly to the hard points because in the major, Toronto had the habit of losing the opening hard point and then winning the next 3 maps because they're a really good search and control team. And in this FaZe, they win that opening hard point, so they don't let Toronto get an early lead in the series, and then they win that first search on checkmate. Obviously, they should have closed it out on garrison control. They had the opportunity to do so, so they let Toronto get back in the series. But like you said, S&D does win championships. If you're a really good search and destroy team, you should have a chance to win any series against anyone. I think the Gorillas are a good example of that because they come really close to beating teams that they're obviously they don't have as much chemistry together, like as far as time, because Chino's only been there for maybe a month and a half with that team, but they were very close to beating other teams. FaZe has that chemistry. They've been together the entire season. They're one of, I believe, 2 teams now that have not made a roster change this season, and they're obviously one of the best search and destroy teams in the world. And they look even better with Tupac. They had that little slump at the end of stage 2, early stage 3, but it seems like they're right where they left off. And man, if they're winning every search, it's going to be really hard to beat them in any series, especially at grand finals. We'll talk about that later, but when there's more than 2 searches, it makes it very difficult to win a series against them.
Yeah.
And to close out Friday's matches, we had the Florida Mutineers versus the New York Subliners. This was the other winners bracket semifinal match. The winner would go on to play FaZe in the winter final, and that ended up being the Subliners. Just not really close here. The Mutineers it was surprising to see them here in the first place, in my opinion, just because I thought the Thieves would be. But the Subliners, they just looked incredible. They continued their run of hardpoint wins. What did you think of the Subliners win here?
I just one point. I had a pretty good read on this winners bracket because
Yeah.
I picked FaZe to beat Toronto too, and I had Florida getting to this match. But I did think New York was going to take this match over Florida, but
Mhm.
not in this fashion. This was just an absolute stomp. It was 250, 149 Garrison Hardpoint for New York, 6-0 in the search, and 3-0 in the control. So really strong performance from New York. It was also their first series of this major, and they just came out, made a statement right away. The lowest KD on New York for the series was Mac with a 1.25 overall. Clay dropped a 1.77, Hydra had a 1.58, and Eason had a 1.35. And everybody was negative on Florida. It was just a really strong performance out of New York, and we kind of touched on it at the end of last episode, where I was torn on whether you could consider New York a dark horse or not, just because they were the 1 seed in
Yeah,
a group play or whatever. But like most people were thinking the major was going to go to either Toronto or New York, so they technically weren't in that
Atlanta.
S tier or whatever. What did I say?
You said Toronto or New York.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, Toronto or Atlanta was like that S tier. Those were the two teams most people were picking, and New York was just like on the outside looking in that respect. So like this was a really strong statement win for them to open their major.
On Saturday, the opener was the Los Angeles Thieves versus the London Royal Ravens. The Thieves, they swept the Ravens. They eliminated them from the Stage 3 major with a top 8 finish. Any thoughts on this match?
I don't think we have to touch on it too much. This was technically the Thieves' first win with Hook, right?
Mm-hmm.
Third match, I believe,
Yeah,
with Hook
1 and
now at
2.
that point. And yeah, so their first match with them, 120 or 250 to 123 in hard point. It was a 6-5 in the search and 3-2 in the control. So map one wasn't really close. The other two maps were kind of close. But the Thieves get the job done. It was another case similar to New York series against Florida. Not as dominant though, but all four players on the Thieves had a positive KD. All four players on London were negative. So just an overall strong performance out of the Thieves,
Yep.
and they get that first win with Took.
So with this loss, like I said, the London Royal Ravens, they're out with a top 8 finish, which was actually their best finish of the season at a major so far. Despite that, they announced today that Zaptius has not been re-signed. He'll be leaving the team, and Alex, who started the season on the London starting roster and went back to Europe for personal family matters, he's returning to the United States. He's going to be inserted back into the starting lineup for the Ravens. And they also announced that Afro, a European Challengers player who they signed as a substitute early in the season, but he's been stuck in Europe as well. He is actually coming to the United States. They didn't confirm whether he would be starting, but I mean, he's coming to the United States, so there's definitely at least some interest there. You would presume that he will eventually become a starter, or he will at least help the team practice or something similar. And also their former head coach, Dominate, who they had actually announced had been released like 2 weeks ago. He rejoins London, and he's coming to the United States as well to help the team. What do you think of Alex coming back in the lineup and Zaptius after a strong performance, a relatively strong performance for London at the major, him not coming back?
Yeah, I think this is a key. Like we've touched on it before too, where London has clearly shown they're willing to make moves this year. I don't think it was ever announced. I know London announced for like multiple of their other signings, whether they were like 14-day contracts or
Mm-hmm.
actually, I believe 2-week contracts, or like they signed Paul X for the full season, I believe,
Yeah,
after his 2 week or whatever. So like they were transparent for some signings, but with Zaptius, I don't think they ever actually revealed if it was only a 2 week or a full season, because I tried to look earlier today and I don't think I found it. So it could have been a case where it was just he was signed to one of those 2 weeks contracts, right? And they just decided not to renew it
yeah.
because Alex is coming back. So from a business perspective, like it makes sense if that's the case. I was listening to the flank. What's it? It must have been Monday night. Where Methods was kind of like saying like he doesn't think Alex has been even playing in challengers in the UK, so he's kind of just like coming back. Uh, like he was performing in the pro league and then went home for personal reasons and hasn't like competed since then. So and now it's coming right back into the pro league. So if that is the case and that's correct, that's a little interesting. Kind of like being thrown right back into the fire. So eyes will be on him, seeing how he performs. And like you said, they didn't officially announce a starting lineup for Stage 4 yet, but London was scrimming today against that Easter team. Tom Gravity, John, Jerd, and Sib, I believe. Tom Gravity was the one streaming, and Zuma was watching earlier, and I was watching. And London was scrimming with Shawnee, Alex, Afro, and Paul X. So, obviously, could be a sign that he's starting or they're just trying things out. I think people were saying that he's still in Europe, like for these scrims, and he was absolutely frying. Like he was popping two pieces, and Zuma was like kind of blown away, and he was like asking like chat what's going on, and people were saying he's like the British Hydra and all this stuff. So, it was kind of entertaining, but. Regardless of the situation there, if Afro does come in and make his debut, it'll certainly be exciting to see if he lives up to these expectations that apparently some people have. Regardless, though, it's always good to see new talent come in. So I for one will be excited if Afro does make his debut to see how he does.
Yeah, and I think we've talked about it before, but London has seemed determined of making their roster a English roster. That's kind of what they want. That's how I think they view their team. They're an English team. I know they have Paul X still, but I don't think they want to just. You don't want to take out a player that you think like you can't replace, I guess, just because he's not English. So, but I mean, Alex seemed to be someone that they were willing to build around because he is English. He is a really talented player. I had him on my fantasy team earlier in the season. He was doing all right. He seems like a really good kid. And that just, I think they are very committed to doing that. So it wouldn't be surprising if we see Afro come in who, no offense to Zed, but he was not their first option, obviously. He wasn't even a substitute for London until Alex went back to England, and Afro has been on their roster as a substitute and in challengers for the entire season. So it seems to me that they're just continuing their goal of making it an English team and trying to compete as well as they can with that kind of roster.
And I think it's a case too where we are getting towards the end of the season here. London right now is on the outside looking in for champs. They still have time to make a run, but this could be a case where they have Afro. He's a young amateur player signed already. They're paying him, and they want to see what they have.
Yeah.
That could be the case. We've talked about that before with like Hydra before he came in and was just an absolute stud. We were saying that New York had this guy that at the beginning of the season they wanted to start, and even though New York was playing strong with their previous roster at the start of the year, they had a chance to see what they had in Hydra, and obviously it worked out in this most recent stage. But that for me is interesting. We saw last year with London, like they signed Nasty, I believe his name was, and he never actually played for London, so. A little bit of a difference here where if Afro does come in, he's that sub player where they're giving him a shot. And if he does play, you kind of still got to feel bad for Zero, right? He was like that intended starter from day one for him, and it just never panned out, never got the visa situation. He was released along with Dominate, I believe, not too long ago. So hopefully we'll see Zero back in the league next year because I think he's super talented. But yeah, I'm interested to see where London goes from here. It's obviously not shocking at this point that they're making another change.
Yeah, they're in 10th place right now, 50 points back from 8th place. And obviously, you need to get into the top 8 to even get to the playoffs. So that's really important. I mean, had they... I'm pretty sure that they finished in the top 8 last season in the regular season.
Yeah.
But... some of those teams, like I believe OpTic Gaming Los Angeles, we must not speak of them, but Fake OpTic, they had a poor regular season last year, but then had a very strong into the season at champs. They almost beat the Huntsmen, and they had a really
Came in
good.
fourth at champs last year.
Was that?
London came in fourth last year at champs.
Yeah, I know. I was thinking for some reason that they hadn't finished in the top 8 last season in the regular season, but OpTic was the one that I was thinking about where they had a poor regular season, and had champs been held on land, they likely wouldn't have even made it because they were going to do the top 8 thing as well. But this season, like London, LAG, Paris, Seattle, none of these bottom 4 teams are out of it by any means, because who knows what kind of team Florida will be like in the next stage. They've been a little bit up and down. Minnesota, we just saw they're up and down. Who knows how the Thieves will end up with Hook in this lineup. So we'll just see. Everything is really still fluid, and it'll be interesting to see how Alex and possibly Afro fit into this new London starting lineup. And on the second match of the day on Saturday, E Clasico, Dallas versus OpTic. I mean, I don't think either. OpTic didn't look great in that LAG series. They were very close to losing several of those maps. They obviously did lose that first map, but Dallas looked pretty poor against Atlanta in their winners bracket. So coming into this match, I don't know if any of their fans, I don't know if Dallas fans had a lot of confidence in their team. I don't know if OpTic fans had a lot of confidence in their team. But OpTic, they come in and they sweep Dallas. They eliminate them from the Stage 3 major, I believe, with the top 6 or top 7 finish or something like that.
Top 8, yeah.
Top 8. So what did you think of OpTic beating Dallas here?
Yeah, for your early question, I wish our head correspondent Trem was in the chat so we could ask him for the perspective from a Dallas fan. But yeah, coming into the major, this was the situation in my prediction where I said this could have been the swing map or swing series for OpTic, where I anticipated that Atlanta would beat Dallas and Dallas would drop down to face OG after OpTic wins their first loser bracket match. So I thought this was going to be a tougher match. I said on the last pod that I could see OpTic winning if they heat up, and obviously that's what happened. But I actually did pick Dallas to win it, and OpTic came to, in particular, Dashy came to play. He absolutely popped off in this series. But yeah, I mean, Dallas had 0-6 map count at this major, right? They lose 3-0 to FaZe and then 3-0 to OpTic, so
What
they
in New
didn't
York?
even win a map at the major. Yeah, that was New York last major. So, yeah, this was a super interesting series outside of like OpTic dominating like statistically and everything. It was interesting because Shotzi did have a 1v4 that was pretty cool in the search. And then we had the introduction of that timeout or pause feature, which everybody was kind of blown back like, well, what the heck is this?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up. Thought that was noteworthy. That'll definitely be cool if we're able to, have that consistently throughout the rest of the years of the CDL. But at the end of the day, OpTic, kind of dominated this series, and most notably, if we look at the stats, Dashy had a 2.15 overall in the series, whereas Illy had a 0.5. So pretty big difference there. And yeah, this is the start of OpTic going on a run. Like I imagined, if they were able to get the job done, OpTic, despite their previous struggles, it seems like they're kind of the tournament team with the veteran leadership of T2P and all that. They kind of showed up, proved some doubters wrong, including me, who picked Dallas to actually win it. So pretty interesting match.
Like you said, Illy had a 0.5 KD in this series. It's got to be one of the lowest series KD of the season. I don't remember seeing anybody,
I saw in the one sec. In that New York Florida stomp, Havoc had a 0.49. He went 22 and 45.
Oh.
So one death more, one death more than a 0.5.
Yeah. Hashtag greasy gang. But so what do you think of Dallas right now? They obviously go 0-6 at the major. I have it pulled up. I did have their schedule pulled up. So they play Ultra on, I believe it was April 25th. That seems about right. So they have Hook to start stage 3. So April 22nd they beat Paris to start off stage 3. April 25th they lose to Toronto. Or no. Okay. I figured it out. My brain is working now. So they beat Paris on April 22nd. Later that night, they bench Hook for Fellow. And then their first match with Fellow is April 25th against the Toronto Ultra. They lose that map. So since they put in Fellow in place of Hook, who they have since traded to the LA Thieves, they are 2-4 with Fellow. Obviously, that's in the 4 losses. They haven't won any of those maps. They're 0-12 in their 4 losses.
4?
What?
Are they 2-4? Because didn't they go 2-3? Or no, did they go 3-2 in group play? They went 3-2, didn't they?
Yeah, because they won
Okay.
that Paris match and then they won 2 with Fellow. So they lost.
Yeah, that's right.
They got swept by Ultra. They win in 5 games against LAG. They get swept by the Mutineers. They win 3-1 against Minnesota. And at the major, they get swept by Atlanta and get swept by OpTic. What do
Yep.
you think of the Fellow experiment and this roster going forward? And Illy he's changed roles. He just dropped a 0.5.
I mean, so it's clearly not working as they intended, right? Like, obviously, we don't know if this is, a short-term change where they expected Fellow to come in for Hook and immediately succeed and be championship caliber team. We don't know if that was the case. It just seemed like, based on everything we've heard so far, that there were some communication issues, and they had to make a change. So this could be more of a long-term project, I guess. It would be a little weird considering, Dallas is the inaugural CDL champions, and
They were in
defend their
second
throne.
place when they made that roster change as well.
Yeah, so I mean, that'll still be a super, just a highly questioned roster move for a long time, if not for the rest of CDL history. But regardless of that, Dallas is definitely going to have to um, try to prove some doubters wrong in stage 4, right? I mean, it doesn't. I would be surprised if Dallas made a move before stage 4. I believe it was Crone actually. CDL Intel tweeted that like it was a podcast clip of Rambo saying he's basically like the Jackie Moon of the CDL, and he confirmed that he's now their sub. So he's GM, coach, and Dallas's sub. So it doesn't seem like they're gonna make a move. And they're gonna have to try to figure things out. It's kind of like a case where I don't know exactly what they're gonna need to do. I think. Yeah, it was these keys to victory for OpTic, the OpTic Dallas series. Where obviously they struggled against FaZe because FaZe smoked them 3-0, but they were 0-5 in control heading into that OpTic series with Velo. So that means they're 0-6 with Velo in control. Obviously it's not the most important game mode. You only play it once in a series, but that's still noteworthy, in my opinion. So they have some stuff to work on, and we're gonna have to keep an eye out for that at this stage. It will be interesting to see what goes on in the group selection show, right? Because in these past couple stages, it's always been heading into stage 1, it was Dallas and Atlanta who were automatically like that top team, and they got the first 2 picks. And then they got it again after stage 1 because they were in the finals. And then going into stage 3, it was Toronto and Atlanta. And now this time it'll be Atlanta and New York. And you would assume Toronto would be the first pick. So New York will probably have Toronto in their group. And then would New York send to Atlanta's group? That would be interesting because, if we go by top 4, it would be OpTic. Yeah. But I believe even though OpTic got eliminated early in the last major, they were still, I think Toronto sent OpTic to FaZe's group with the first pick, even though OpTic got top 6 or top 8. I think it was top 6.
Yeah.
So that'll be interesting to see how it plays out. Obviously, just based on that real quick, it doesn't seem like Dallas will be a top pick, but that's kind of, crazy to think about if you just think about where they are in the standings compared to some of the other teams. So I guess that was a long-winded way of saying that A lot of question marks surrounding Dallas heading into stage 4, and we're gonna have to see what they pull off.
Dallas are currently in third place in the league, 10 points behind the Subliners, who are in second, and only 5 points separating Dallas between Dallas and Toronto. Toronto's just 5 points back, and only 30 points between Dallas and OpTic, who's in fifth place. So there's a very real chance if Dallas does not have a good stage 4 group play or a stage 4 major, and Toronto and OpTic do what they've been doing for like the last week or so, and they come out and they play well, they win 3 or 4 matches each in group play, there's a very real chance Dallas could end stage 4 in fifth place. So it's been I mean they had a good sized lead because of how well they played over the first 2 stages, but man, this has been a really rough stretch for Dallas, and let's see if they can actually end up salvaging what seemed to be a really promising season early on. Next match, Toronto Ultra versus the LA Thieves. I'm pretty sure the Thieves were not too happy about having to play Ultra coming off a loss, and the Ultra, they win 3-1. What did you think of the Ultra's, I guess, comeback here?
I mean, well, we gotta talk about this first map, right? Like Ultra went 250-14 on Raid Hardpoint. Like, man, that was one of the. I'm pretty sure, like I was saying in the group chat, that I like went in the shower at the start of the series, and like I came back and it was like 150-10 or something great. Like I was like, what just happened? Like I had to rewatch it back because I had missed so much of it and I didn't expect to. And it was just an absolute stomp. Obviously, we have to take it with a slight grain of salt because they did apparently have server issues and they switched servers after the map won. Regardless, it was still like a really dominant win in that hard point for Ultra. And then after that server switch, the Thieves do respond by taking Miami Search 6-1. And at this point, that moved Toronto to 0-3 S&D in the major. And like we had talked about with that FaZe, that Game 2 loss to FaZe in the winners bracket was their first S&D loss in 33 days. And now at this point, they were 0-3 in S&D. So it was kind of like a question mark for me. It's like maybe a little worried, like what's going on with Toronto's S&D, or like these teams figuring out what they're doing, watching VOD, etc. So that's something we're gonna have to keep an eye on for Toronto moving into stage 4. But then Toronto is able to close it out. They win their 12th straight control. And they end up taking the second hard point on Checkmate 250-81. So maybe that 250-81 is a little bit more of a realistic range for map 1 without the server issues. We'll never know, obviously. But that means 14-81. That means they
They got 100
like
point club.
double 100 point club them.
It was 595.
Yeah. So yeah, that was just a big series for Toronto in the sense of them bouncing back from their first loss in so long, regardless of the struggle there in S&D.
Yeah, it's just an absolute. I don't know if this was confirmed by the CDL, but some people were saying, I believe it was JP from New York. I think he said that it was the most lopsided hardpoint win in like major Call of Duty history, like either in the Pro League or in like
I know what you're talking about. I saw his tweet. Yeah.
Yeah, because I believe before that it was like 100 Thieves or something.
No, it was
a Nables. It was a Nables team, right? It wasn't like 250, like 22 or something.
Was it?
A Nables.
I'm thinking of the FaZe Epsilon one or something they were talking about too.
I just saw a Nables tweet and he was saying something about where is it?
He hasn't tweeted that much, but why can't I find this?
I don't know. Maybe he deleted it.
No, here it is. Yeah, so Toronto Ultra sets the record for fastest hardpoint map between pro teams since the start of IW, with 250-14 win over LAT that lasted 5:43. The previous record was held by TK in their 250-28 win versus Vitality in World War II Pro League that clocked in at 5:51.
Yeah, so this was like if you took a really long poop, it was over and you didn't even know it. You were wiping and they were ending the map. Some people said that they literally went to go eat and they came back and it was already in the search. So they had gotten through map 1 and the break before they came back. I mean, just it's incredible. We likely will see something similar when they expand because those teams at the very bottom will be even worse than the teams at the very bottom right now. I mean, you have to think that some of those guys are gonna be stretched thin. We're gonna have some.
There's a lot of talent not in the league right now.
Yeah, but you got to think that the worst team, like there, so if they get to 20, 22 teams or something, that 22nd team is not going to be good. Like there's just no way.
I don't know. We'll have to find out.
It's not like LA Thieves are actually a bad team. I'm not saying that, but
No.
just a ridiculous scoreline here.
Yeah.
And maybe they just have some hard point things that they had to work on. Who knows? They're obviously out of the tournament with this loss, which is disappointing considering they were 3-1 heading into the final week, and then they benched TJ for Hook, which is, like we said, it's understandable why you would do that. But it didn't work out for stage 3. They end up losing their final group play match. They lose the first match of the major, and then they win against London, and then they lose against Toronto. So only one win with Hook so far, but still a lot of time to turn it around and do well for the rest of the season. So let's move on to Florida versus OpTic. Obviously, OpTic, they're coming off 2 straight wins. This is as many wins as they got in the entire group play in stage 3. They just crush Florida and eliminate them from the tournament. What do you think of OpTic winning 3-0?
I mean, this was kind of what I was touching on earlier, where I said, I predicted that I thought Dallas was going to take it, but if OpTic was able to beat Dallas, I felt like that was the win that could help them go on a run, and that's what happened. They had that momentum from that previous win, and they come in against Florida, and they take care of business right away with a 3-0. I believe so. The first Moscow hardpoint was 250 to 139, so not particularly close. The raid search 6-5 came down to around 11 dash. He clutched a 1v3. That was super cool clutch. He picked up a 2-piece in laundry, and it was a 1v1 between him and Havoc. Dash was able to get the bomb down and then pick off Havoc too. So it was a really good play out of him, and from there, OpTic takes the control 3-1 and basically kind of over once they clutch that up, in my opinion. So yeah, that solidified OpTic had a 6-0 map count on Saturday with their 2 sweeps of Dallas and Florida, and they made it to Sunday.
Yeah, this is at this point I was thinking maybe OpTic. Obviously, they beat Empire. They were cold coming into that because they hadn't played, but they had only played maybe an hour and a half before this match, and we've been talking about it before, and people talked about it after the grand finals on Sunday, but there was talk about how these teams actually benefit from having a match earlier in the day, or in some cases a match right before their next match. What do you think of OpTic having a match about an hour and a half, 2 hours before this one, and then they come out really hot?
It's not the first time we've seen that happen, right?
Mm-hmm.
Just stage 2 major, Toronto goes on that Sunday run where they beat Minnesota, Dallas, and then FaZe. So what they won 11 maps on Sunday, I think it was, to win the stage 2 major.
Yeah.
So it's not the first time we've happened. I think it's a situation, unless we're capping teams to only play 1 match a day, which would obviously lengthen the tournament by pretty absurd time. I don't really know a way around it. It's just something that's gonna happen. And it's kind of like a situation where it's on the other team, where if like in Florida's case here, you're going to be playing against OpTic or Dallas, who's playing a match ahead of time with you. You got to try to get a scrim with another team, maybe a team in the winners bracket that's playing after you, or I don't know exactly who you're going to try to scrim, but you got to try to get a scrim, so you're trying to match that level of being warmed up and ready to go. And I'm sure the teams do that. Obviously, they warm up and stuff. So I don't know. I don't really know if there's a way around it.
Yeah, so let's get to the final match on Saturday, the winners bracket final. The winner of this would go on to the grand final. They would secure a top two finish for the tournament. Atlanta FaZe versus New York Subliners. Um, New York obviously gave Atlanta their only loss of stage three group play earlier on, and they come out. They win a 3-2 series, despite Atlanta ending the Subliners' 11-game hardpoint winning streak. What did you think of the Subliners' win here?
Yeah, this was an awesome series overall. Kind of like you said, there's uh some stuff that was unexpected, just like in the sense that New York was able to take checkmate, search and destroy, which was the second map. I didn't look it up for sure, but I know the broadcast had been gassing Atlanta's checkmate search, so I believe it could have been their first loss on checkmate search. I'm not 100% sure on that, but it's they had a good record on checkmate search regardless, so that was a little surprising. And then, like you said, New York was undefeated since adding Hydra in hardpoint, and Atlanta was able to steal a hardpoint off them. So this was a super entertaining series. New York comes out and takes map 1 and map 2, but Atlanta responds by taking 3 and 4, forcing game 5, and then it comes down to game 5, round 11 on Express. It was a 1v1 between Simp and Hydra, and
Hydra Smart. He didn't take the gunfight.
yeah, no, I believe they were talking about on the flank that Clay was kind of like, just because he's teamed with Simp before, he was telling him, he's like, he's not gonna play it, so don't chal it. And Hydra listened to him, and Simp didn't end up planning. So I don't know how true that was, but I believe that's what they were talking about on the flank. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, this was a case kind of like where we were talking about earlier for FaZe and Toronto, where Atlanta wins both searches, they win the series. Here in New York takes both searches and they take the series.
Yeah, I mean, if you can win at least one of the searches against FaZe, that gives you such a better chance at beating them in a series. And if you're winning two searches against FaZe, that's obviously incredible considering how good they've been all season long. We saw in the stage two major, Toronto, they won because they were beating them in searches consistently, and that's a major key to beating FaZe at all times. But really shocking to see New York win both of them. I think that Express search, it might have been the best search game that I've seen between professional teams like ever, because it was, you had all the drama basically. RCD's just clutching up over and over again,
There were a lot of
and
good moments.
obviously a 1v1 round 11 between Simp, who's probably the best Call of Duty player in the world, and Hydra, who, I mean, he's not the best Call of Duty player, but he's been on a roll and he's a rookie, and you want to see how he reacts to a situation like that. So just a really interesting, really great game. We had a lot of great matches throughout the entire week because
This was kind of like the turning point on Saturday, where Sunday was full of great matches, but like Saturday was where things really started heating up leading into Sunday, and there was a lot of good matches. Didn't mean to cut you off. Sorry.
no, but when we get these matches between the top 6 teams, top 7 teams, and it's OpTic versus Dallas, Atlanta versus New York, Toronto versus Atlanta, those type of matches, that's when we see the best Call of Duty. No offense to those bottom 4 or 5 teams, but man, to see the top 4 or 5 teams play each other, they always put on a show, and it's incredible. We just I think Nubsy said it, that Call of Duty just seems to be in a really good spot right now. Although some players will complain about the meta or whatever, but all in all, I think from a viewership standpoint, from a spectator standpoint, it seems to be really good. And this is just a perfect example of that, as New York moves on to the grand finals, their first grand finals of this season. And they won an event last season, so I think that was their first or their second grand finals in their team history, I guess. And then what was
Sorry,
that?
go ahead.
No, I was gonna move on. So if you have any
I was just
thoughts,
gonna say this was the first time that we saw FaZe get knocked down to the loser
oh
bracket
yep,
this season. Obviously, it was only for one match because they go down to the losers finals, but still kind of interesting tidbit.
Yeah, and something I put in one of the articles, I forget which one it was, but during the weekend when Atlanta clinched their winners bracket final spot, or yeah, winners bracket final, they secured top three, I believe, in their yeah. So they got top three, so they're the only team this season to finish top three in each of the first three majors. Obviously, they finished top two because they get to the
Yeah,
grand finals here, but the Empire were if they had gotten to the top three of this event, they would have joined FaZe, but they obviously didn't. So that
yeah.
was just something interesting that's happened this season. And on Sunday, we have three matches. First, we have the losers bracket semifinal between the OpTic Chicago and the Toronto Ultra. OpTic, their losers bracket run comes to an end here with a 3-2 loss, but they played really, really well. They gave Toronto everything they could handle, but Toronto ends up winning. What did you think of the Ultras win here?
I think I tweeted it after that. Like, OpTic, for a team that was starting out in round two of the losers bracket, having immense struggles in the end of stage three group play, uh, for them to come within game five, round 11 of knocking off the defending champions, that just goes to speak for how much potential this team really has. And obviously, a lot of OpTic fans would have loved for them to clutch out that round
Mm-hmm.
and keep the losers run going, but that's not what happens. I think the most important aspect of this, though, is it puts to bed any questions of OpTic potentially making a roster change, right?
Yeah.
There were some people who were bringing that up, and we touched on it, and I was like firmly in the camp where I felt like there was no way they were making a change. Uh, and it seems like that was just like an idea that was floating around in the community. But after this, I don't see any. I didn't see any possibility before, and I still don't see any possibility of OpTic making a change, especially with Stage 4 Major going on LAN. That should be like, OpTic should be looking forward to that because I'm pretty sure Scump has been pretty vocal about wanting to play on LAN again and thinking that OpTic will be a better team on LAN than online. So that'll be interesting to see down the road. But yeah, that was the big thing. OpTic was able to win both hard points in the series, but Toronto wins both searches. It did come down to the Game 5, Round 11, where Toronto clutched up. And yeah, I just thought it was real impressive that for a team that was struggling coming into this major, OpTic came within one round of knocking off the defending champs.
Yeah, we spoke a lot about it over the last, I think, 3 weeks
Oh yeah,
because they had been really struggling, and I predicted them to get whatever top 10 or
and
top it's a top 10 finish for OpTic in a 12-team league. Hashtag Green Wall would be burning down if that happened, and I didn't like the only reason I didn't think they would make a roster change had that happened, had they lost to the Gorillas on day one. The only reason I didn't think that was because I don't see a person that they could go out and get and actually
exactly.
make their team better.
Yeah,
I think people would, some of the toxic fans that are in OpTic circle would want a roster change because they just want to see something change. And that's a lot of teams. A lot of teams do that where, they think, any change will make us better, which is not true because we've seen teams get much worse with roster changes, even when they're already bad or performing poorly. So just a really impressive performance by OpTic. Obviously, they would have liked to win this series and move on to the losers bracket finals and eventually the grand finals, but a top four finish is really respectable, especially considering you didn't have the advantage of starting in the winners bracket and having that extra loss. You could lose one before you really have to turn it on. So great job by OpTic, and a great win for Toronto. They continue their streak of making top threes, I guess. They make it 2 in a row. They get some really needed CDL points because they didn't have too hot of a start, and a top 3 finish. Obviously, they'll They only get top 3, they don't get top 2, but a top 3 finish is really good for CDL points in the overall standings. And that leads us into the losers bracket finals, another rematch between the Atlanta FaZe and Toronto Ultra. Atlanta won the earlier matchup in the winners bracket round 2, I believe, against the Ultra, and they win this one as well. They win 3-2. Toronto, they actually lose a control, which is surprising, and they end up losing the series. And I mean, you could say it's the difference because normally they would have that control win, but they didn't get it this time, and they lose the series. What did you make of Atlanta's win again?
That was the big thing for me, was that, it was another 3-2 result, and we've been harping on the search throughout this episode so far.
Mm-hmm.
But in this case, it was a different formula for FaZe, where they were able to win 1-3-5. They didn't win both searches, but they take that control, and Toronto's control streak was at that point, I believe it was 13.
Mm-hmm.
And they snapped that, and it was a 3-0 control too on Garrison, so it's not like it was particularly close. Atlanta won Garrison hardpoint 250 to 123, so that wasn't really close either. Toronto responds, takes raid search 6-3. Atlanta has that 3-0 control. Then Toronto wins raid hardpoint 250 to 235. That was a super close one. It came down to that P5, and FaZe just couldn't get a body in to contest for a couple extra seconds to force a rotation to P1, so Toronto takes that. And then Atlanta closes things out 6-2 on Moscow. Do we have the stats here? So just pull it up. I can't remember who exactly was it. This the series that this was another series where BZ and Celium just went off. BZ dropped a 1.38 overall. KD and Celium had a 1.27. So, yeah, it was a little bit of a different formula compared to Atlanta's previous win in this major over Toronto, but Atlanta got the job done again. So went 2-0 against the defending champs in the major, which I guess. If you look at it either way, the winner of the major beat the defending champ both times they played, but the defending champ only lost to the same team to get eliminated.
Yeah. Just an incredible series. Atlanta, they proved definitively that they're the hotter team right now over Toronto, to get these 2 wins to avenge their Stage 2 major loss. Really big wins for them. And they qualify for their 3rd consecutive major grand finals. They're the only team to do so this season. They're the only team, like I said earlier in the show, to finish in the top 3 of the first 3 majors. And this obviously gives them a great lead in the overall standings. But going into this grand finals, they were playing the Subliners, who they had lost to earlier in the event, and in Stage 3 group play. So you could say that, I don't know if New York was favored as far as betting odds, but New York definitely had their number in the previous 2 matchups against FaZe, which those were the only 2 losses FaZe had even suffered since they lost to Toronto in the Stage 2 major. And then you put the vetoes in here. So Subliners, since this is a best of 9 grand final, there are very few vetoes. FaZe only gets 1 veto. They vetoed APOC Hardpoint, which they had lost to. I know they lost to LAG in Stage 2. I don't know why I remember that, but maybe it's because of LAG. So I remember that. So that was their only veto of the series. And then
it was map 1 in the winners bracket final between Atlanta and New York, and they lost it to New York 250 to 181, so that was probably the thinking behind that.
No, they're obviously thinking about LAG back in Stage 2. They're like, we can't lose that one again. And then New York, they veto Raid Hardpoint, Moscow Search and Destroy, and Raid Control, which gives you a best of 9 of Garrison Hardpoint, Checkmate S&D, Garrison Control, Moscow Hardpoint, Miami Search, Checkmate Control, Raid Search, Checkmate Hardpoint, and Express Search. Although, as we found out, we wouldn't need the last 2 maps. So this was, like I said, a best of 9. So 1st to 5, and there is no advantage for the Subliners, which has been a controversial topic over the last few stages because, Call of Duty fans aren't used to that. They're not used to a winners bracket team not having some sort of advantage. But heading in, first map, New York wins. And then Atlanta kind of returns to being Atlanta, and they win, I believe, 3 straight maps, and they lose one. They lose that next, so that would have been like their 5th map, and then they win the rest of them, and they close it out with a 5-2 victory. What did you make of Atlanta's impressive win here?
Yeah, you kind of hit a lot of the points there that I was going to bring up, but we've touched on New York's strong point being their hard point since bringing Hydra. So they start off the best of 9 here with a a strong 250 to 185 victory on Garrison Hardpoint. But then, like you just said, after that, Atlanta rattles off 3 straight map wins to go up 3-1. And then it was Miami Surge where I believe New York, they definitely were up 4-0. I think it could have been 5-0. And then Atlanta strung together a couple rounds, and New York ends up taking it 6-3. But like if Atlanta had pulled off a full sale there, that would have definitely been the dagger in my opinion. But that was interesting that, they kind of trade after. So New York wins the hard point, Atlanta wins the search, Atlanta wins the control, and then we kind of get to that point where it resets again and goes hard point, search, and control. And just based off of the strength of these teams that we've talked about, you probably would have expected New York to take the hard point and Atlanta to take the search, but that kind of flip-flops. So Atlanta had a 3-1 edge going into the Miami search, and that was kind of a must-win map for New York, right? Like they don't want to go down 4-1 and move 1 map away. So that was a big one. And then that checkmate control was super wild and went down to the wire with Atlanta taking it 3-2. I'm not really remembering it particularly well. I think it was like all of the defenses won, but Atlanta won the offense in overtime, right? That was when like Varsity slid into the control point against Hydra under plane and got the kill with like 1 second left or something.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that's when that happened. I might be not remembering right, but I think I'm right. So that was a super entertaining map, and then from there, Atlanta has the 4-2 lead, and they just close things out on Raid Search, which I remember in particular was the same map that they won their first major on because they had the 4v1 against Crim6 in Laundry, and they were going for the finishing move, and that's what I was putting in the Twitter chat, was that I wanted Atlanta to end the major with a finishing move, but that's not how it went.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it was another, we've said it a bunch now, but although it was a 5-2 scoreline, overall it was a super entertaining series. The entire day of Sunday was high-octane matches and really entertaining. And this was an awesome major.
Yeah, and so the only map that they ended up replaying, like between their winners bracket final match and their grand final match, was Checkmate Search. In the winner bracket final, New York won 6-4. That was the map that ASIM had 13 kills on. And in the grand final, Abizi and Simp both dropped 12, which is just ridiculous. They end up winning round 11 there. We would have gotten Express Search, which has not been a particularly strong map for FaZe in the past. They obviously lost to New York on it in Game 5 of the winner bracket final, and I know that the first Express of the CDL season earlier was FaZe versus New York, and New York also won that, and that's just been not the strongest map for FaZe, so it would have been interesting if we would have gotten to a map 9. We have still yet to get to the 9th map of the series in any of the first 3 majors. I believe it was 5-3 last time with Toronto and FaZe, and it was 5-2 similarly between Dallas and FaZe in stage 1. So maybe in the next 2 shots we have, maybe we'll get a game 9 round 11 at like midnight Eastern Standard Time or something. Because had this gone to 9 maps, it would have been pretty late, and Atlanta at least would have been playing most of the day, considering they had played right before this. So they had a 5-game series before this. They would have played 14 maps in one day, which obviously is a record for the CDL this season, just because that's how the schedule has been set up. But would have been really interesting to see. It doesn't happen. 5-2 win for FaZe. They win the $200,000 a grand prize. They get the 75 CDL points, which just adds to their lead in the Call of Duty League. They are now 100 points ahead of the Subliners, who have moved into second place with 240. Atlanta is just the most ridiculous stat line of like a team. 22-4 this season, and they are 79-36 in maps. So they have a 69% win percentage. Nice. And it's 12% better than the second best team. It's just absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. I did look real quick just to make sure, and that was the checkmate control was the one there. RCD slid into the control point with FaZe on offense. 1.5 seconds left. It was a 3v1. FaZe had 3 guys left. Only Asim was up on New York, but because there was only 1.5 seconds left, Arcides was the only one who could get to the point. So that 1v1 determined it. Like, Arcides got the kill on Asim, and that was New York's last life, so they won. But if Asim got the kill on Arcides, the other 2 guys on FaZe wouldn't have had time to get to the point, and New York would have won. So that was super interesting. And then I was reminded too when I was looking for that, Celium had that nasty 3-piece on the raid search in the 4th round, where like they were just running out of bottom art, and he like just, you didn't even see him, he just disintegrated them. Those first 4 rounds of raid search just flew by, and FaZe was up 4-0 in the blink of an eye. So I was just reminded of that while I was looking for the clips. But yeah, it was a great series, like you said. New York came out, asserted their dominance again, and showed everybody why. Even though they didn't win the Stage 2 major, they've lost 4 series all the year, they're still the best team in the game.
To wrap up the Stage 3 major, I'll just go through the standings real quick. This is the overall season standings. Just a reminder, the top 8 are the only teams that will make it to the CDL playoffs, which we imagine will have millions of dollars on the line, and obviously the prize of being world champions. So first we have Atlanta FaZe, second the Subliners, third Dallas Empire, fourth Toronto Ultra, fifth OpTic Chicago, sixth the LA Thieves, seventh Minnesota Rocker 8, Florida Mutineers 9, LAG 10, London 11, Paris, and 12 is Seattle. And that brings us to, I don't believe we talked about Decimate yet, unless I completely blanked it. Yeah, so Seattle announced earlier today that they have opted to part ways with Decimate, who joined literally 15 days ago. He joined on May 3rd. So they did their 2-week contract with him. He came in right before the last week of Stage 3 group play. At that point, Seattle was already in last place in their group. They were 0-3 going into last week. They lose those final 2 matches of group play. They finish 0-5 in their group. They start in the losers bracket, obviously, for the major, and then they end up getting knocked out of the major without a match victory. I don't believe that they've won a major match at all this season, as far as I know. They only have 50 CDL points, and they've only won 4. So they either started in loser bracket round 2 one event, or they won one major.
I think they started. Yeah, they went 1-4 in group play in Stage 1, and London went 0-5. So no, that might not have been.
Stage 2 major, they finished top 8, so they would have had to have won something.
Oh, Stage 2, yeah. Stage 2, they went 2-3, and they came in 4th.
Yeah, so they beat Florida in the Stage 2 major. They started in losers bracket round 2. They beat Florida, and that is their only win of a major this season. It just hasn't worked out for Seattle in 2020 and 2021. It's been a really, really bad first, 18 months for Seattle in the Call of Duty League. They're in last place. They decide to make this move. They part ways with Decimate, who joined 15 days ago. He replaced Looney in their starting lineup, and obviously things didn't work out. I mean, I've seen a lot of tweets from the Seattle guys, particularly Octane and Nubsy. They've been kind of tweeting through it. Octane said he should write a book because his career is just absolutely ridiculous, and so it seems to be some kind of disagreement within that team about roster changes. Although Seattle did say in their statement via Twitter that it was a mutual decision. I mean, that could just be a lie, and Decimate was not looking to be a free agent again. But, Decimate is now a free agent. He's probably going to stay in challengers. I'm sure he'll have, his pick at really any challenger team because that he was really good before. He didn't really get a huge chance in the Call of Duty League. What did you think of this move, considering how little time he had with them?
I mean, Zuma was talking about it on his stream earlier today, and Crone wrote about it in his report, where it seemed like Decimate was the one who, Crone said that Decimate benched himself, according to his sources. So that was interesting, and I think Zuma was kind of talking about it from the perspective of, like, it seemed like maybe Decimate was just like, this isn't working out, I think I'm going to move on. Actually, he might have tweeted something that I'm thinking of. Give me 1 second.
That's crazy though.
So he said, "Good luck to the boys on Seattle. Felt like I wasn't the piece that could fit in and get us the wins everyone wanted. They are all absolute champions, and I have nothing but respect and love for them, the organization, and fans."
Okay. I've never seen a player. I mean, there was the rumor that Pollux declined London's initial 2-week offer earlier in the season because he felt he could, improve his status and earn himself a longer-term contract, and he ended up doing so. Now he's signed through the rest of the season with London. But man, Decimate just literally gave up a CDL spot. Seattle's...
we don't know for sure. For sure. They usually play, so.
But reportedly, allegedly, whatever you want to say, Decimate may have given up his own spot because maybe he really did not like playing for Seattle, which is much more. I just say it's very fitting considering how bad Seattle's been. But man, this just looks horrible because they said Seattle said in their statement that they're still looking to recruit someone to join them for stage 4, which is only about a week, 9 days away from starting. And and they need these wins. They're 70 points back. They're in last place in the CDL. They need these last 2 stages to go well to finish in the top 8. And it's not starting off too hot right now.
I also thought it was really funny too. Octane had a tweet earlier today, which was reminiscent of the days, you might not remember them too well, and some of our viewers might not, but, longtime Call of Duty fans will remember the days of constant roster swaps and people sketching and all that.
When do you think I started watching COD? Do you think I started watching COD in MW?
No, I mean, like, you might not have remembered them because I think you said you started at, like, the Black Ops 2 champs, was it? I don't remember.
Yeah, Black Ops 2 champs. But everybody was sketching on each other. Basically, before Pro League, everybody was still sketching on each other. So
No, so regardless, but like he puts out a tweet that's reminiscent of these old days where he says, "Myself, Pristini, and Gunless looking for one for next event. 18 plus, main sub, no ego, can travel." And that just made me laugh because it brought me back to those days. But it was interesting he puts in there no ego. We don't know for sure if that's like a shot at Decimate or not. And yeah, like you just said, it seems like Seattle is still searching. Like they have options, and or it's going to be interesting to see what they do. I don't think we'll see Looney come back in the lineup. It doesn't seem like that's something they would do unless it's an emergency situation where they just like don't sign somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Of note, obviously Zaptius was dropped by London earlier today, and Crone did report that Paris was pursuing him. What was the exact way he worded it?
He said that they tried to acquire Saints from the subliners, but due to a $25,000 buyout, Paris moved on from Saints and set its sights on Zaptius instead.
Yeah, so not confirmed yet, but Paris could be looking to get Zaptius. If that doesn't happen though, and Zaptius is a free agent, he could be like that top priority for Seattle right now. Like he fits the bill of what they're looking for in a main sub. Obviously there might be other players and challengers that you look at, notably like someone like John, who has played with guys like Octane and Gunless in the past. That could be an interesting potential pickup, but like you just said, they don't have that much time, and this could potentially be their last shot to like kind of revitalize their roster and make that push because they are so far back compared to some of these other teams in that bottom tier. So like the time is now for them if they want to make that push for champs. And this roster change for whoever they decide to replace Decimate with, this could be like the make or break change for them if they have aspirations of being a champs.
I believe they also tried to pick up Vivid between stage 2 and stage 3 or whatever, and things didn't work out. But maybe they're a little more desperate now, or something. I don't know what the hang up was between LAG and Seattle. Maybe LAG just didn't want to part ways.
It was the buyout negotiations, according to Octane, if I remember correctly. He talked about it in a YouTube video.
All right, so
talk next time.
Maybe that's. Maybe Seattle will, spend more money. They'll say, well, like, we have to get him. Like, this is make or break time. Like you just said, we need to make a run. We need to, get into the top 8. So maybe they'll be a little more flexible in that sense. Who knows? I mean, it's crazy that Decimate, he only spent 2 weeks with them. And, obviously they didn't win any matches. They didn't win any controls, so they went 0-3 in controls, which doesn't help them. But I believe they were 2-1 in Search and Destroy, and then they were like 1-4 or something in Hardpoint. But I mean, it's really not fair considering he came in the last week and didn't get a ton of practice time. So we don't really know what that team could have been had he gotten all that practice and gotten some of the chemistry down. But we'll see. It's who knows what Seattle's going to end up doing because, what are you going to say?
Real quick, and some people are going to think it's a meme. I've seen it be memed already on Twitter. They're looking for a main sub. This could be Doug Censor Martin's time to shine.
It could be. Probably not, but it could be.
And Zuma was talking about it on his stream earlier today too, like from the perspective, like you said, Seattle's in last place. Like, this could be the time where it's like, do they sit back and evaluate like what are our realistic chances of making champs? And if they think there's like they don't have a shot, they could be where an opportunity for them to try and like grow more of a fan base. And if they're the team that gives Doug his shot in the pro league, like, that's a huge storyline, and like regardless of how it plays out, like everyone will be talking about the surge.
Yeah.
You don't know. Doug could come in and drop a 3.0 on everybody.
Or he could get 7 kills in Hardpoint and Octane just absolutely rage quits. Who knows? It really could go either way. But
it would certainly be the most talked about move. Like it would change. Like, we're coming off of Hook, questionably being benched by Dallas and being sent to LA Thieves. Like, that's sitting right now at one of the most questionable moves of this season, certainly, if not of all time. But if Seattle signs Doug Censor Martin, gives him his shot in the Pro League that he's so highly coveted, it would easily be the most talked about roster change of the season. There's no way, whether it's positive or negative, everyone would be talking about it. So many people would be tuning into those Seattle matches. It could be the way that Seattle goes. I don't know.
Does Patty P, does he run a sub in Challengers?
I don't think so. I think the MSMC Patty P days are behind him.
Oh man, that would have been like more entertaining if they streamed scrims, because I mean, I haven't watched Aches in a while because he hasn't been in the league, so he hasn't really been like in the spotlight. But there's nothing more entertaining than an annoyed Aches in scrims, or an annoyed Aches just in general. I just looked it up. Aches and Censor teamed in Challengers. I would have loved to watch scrims because I just don't see. I know they I believe they were on like whatever Quantic weren't they on Quantic together at some point?
Yeah, the FaZe Red team in AW where he won that event when he like sliced his hand.
Yeah. So
They weren't on the same Quantic because that was when it was Quantic Leverage and Censor was on Quantic Next Threat.
gotcha. So yeah, I mean I don't see Censor getting that opportunity as much as some people would love for him to, but who knows? I mean, at this point, who cares? Just just do something. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Like if they don't think they have a chance to make champs, that could be the move that, it might not result in them winning. Who knows? But it would certainly be a very highly discussed roster move, and a lot more people would be tuning into Seattle's matches, in my opinion.
well, and maybe Seattle, their reputation is not that great considering Decimate allegedly, reportedly, he kind of he foregoed his spot. He was like, I would rather be in challengers, and maybe some of these top AMs who are right on the cusp of making it and becoming like mainstays in the league, maybe they won't want to be on Seattle because you might not be able to get to show everything that you're capable of. I don't know if that would be a determining factor if you're like a top AM and you're winning events and you're getting money, but I don't know. It'd be interesting to see.
That's part of why I think Doug could be an actual candidate here, because I feel like he wants to be in the pro league so bad that he would just sign I almost said vet minimum, like it's MLB. He would sign for like that 50K minimum salary and just get his chance. Obviously, I don't know if that's true, but I could see that being, let's say where he's just like, yo, just give me the minimum and give me a shot, and I want to play. I could see it happening. I don't know if it will. I don't think it will happen. I would be surprised. It would be really cool though.
Yeah. I have no idea who they'll end up picking up.
Yep.
I mean, I wasn't expecting to see Decimate depart from Seattle today, but whatever happens, happens, I guess. And to close out the show, a standoff got added today in the midseason update. So yeah, that's cool. I mean, it will hopefully be added to competitive for probably not for stage 4, but maybe for stage 5. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, the midseason update's not live yet, right?
Or they announced that it was going to be added.
Yeah.
So it'll be added May 20th or
Thursday.
something.
Yeah. Which is why I'm confused. I was seeing on Twitter like throughout this that people are talking about the FFAR, the FAMAS, and I don't know if there was like a minor update or something that went live while we were doing this, because I've been seeing tweets about it. So I'm not really sure what's going on. Maybe the update went live early. I don't really know. Obviously, we've been doing this for the last 2 hours, so guess we'll find out after.
Yep.
But yeah, I don't think we really have to talk about it. I think we'll have more.
Mm-hmm.
We can discuss more about standoff in the midseason update once that update actually goes live. I know you wrote about the patch notes earlier today. It seems like there's some changes to snipers, which if they fix like the flinch with snipers, maybe they get un-GA'd. I doubt it, just because
Wasn't the smokes mostly the
we
big
still
deal?
had problems with smokes, yeah, so there wouldn't really be a great counter for sniping. But there were also in the patch notes mentions a lot of assault rifle changes. What was it? It was a lot of bullet velocity changes, I think, right?
Yeah, I think everything got bullet velocity. Something changed in bullet velocity for every AR, I believe.
Yeah. So
the Krig was the big buff, basically.
Yeah. So yeah, those are the major talking points for the midseason update. Obviously, it goes live Thursday at midnight Eastern, so 23 hours from now. So we'll have a better idea next episode of exactly what's going on with that. Obviously, really excited for Standoff to be in the game. Hopefully, it gets added to the map pool right away. It seems like, well, maybe it was JP who tweeted it or something. I don't know, but somebody was like tweeting about spending the day on Monday, like watching Standoff VOD. I'm pretty sure it was JP, but I could be wrong. But it seems like, it's just an iconic map and one of the best competitive maps in COD history. It would just be criminal if it wasn't immediately added to
Hmm.
uh, the map pool. It should be in Hardpoint and Search and Destroy, without a doubt. I think for Hardpoint, it could replace Apocalypse. I don't know if they'll want to replace a DLC map with another DLC map, so it could replace like Checkmate or something like that. I think Checkmate is like the easy answer for Search and Destroy for Standoff to replace it, just because we've seen throughout this year that the bomb site not in the plane on Checkmate is so hard to plant. There were a couple plants this weekend throughout the major, which was kind of cool. But regardless, it seems like that's the most unbalanced map for Search. So despite some people not liking Miami, just because both bomb sites are actually viable, Standoff will, in my opinion, Standoff should replace Checkmate. We'll know for sure until it's announced. But I think the only question on most people's minds is, will we see Standoff in Control, right? Just because Control wasn't a thing in Black Ops 2 when Standoff was played. So that's going to come down to where the control points are, and B, what map you take out for Control. Like, Standoff's not going to replace Raid, so it would have to obviously come in for Garrison or Checkmate, and then it comes down to a question of which map you think Standoff is better than and where those points are. So that will obviously have to wait and see. But yeah, I'm really excited to hopefully get to see the pros back on Standoff soon.
And that does it from us. We've been here for about 2 hours. I'm sweating bullets.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next Tuesday, May 25th, for the Stage 4 preview show. We'll break down the first 10 matches of Stage 4, and we'll give our predictions for those matches, as well as who we think will end up winning Stage 4. Make sure to subscribe on YouTube and follow us on Twitter at Ego Chall Podcast. You can follow Bink on Twitter at JBink with 2Ks, and I'm at Presbyers. Also, follow us or subscribe or whatever on your podcast platforms. If you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, make sure to share the podcast. If you have some friends that you play COD with, or just people that you think would be interested in our podcast, make sure to share it to them. And make sure to give us 5 stars, 5-star rating on Apple Podcasts. It really helps us. It gets us boosted up the charts, and more people will listen to it. And then maybe we'll be able to quit our jobs and just do this full time, and we can just sit at home and talk about Call of Duty for 24 hours a day. That's all from me. Have a good night, everyone. And Bink, take it away.
Yep. Thanks for tuning in, guys. And as always, been the chow.